What's going on, guys? We have another episode of the Realtor Spotlight, and today we have a special guest, Gus Larrea.
What's up, everyone?
Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us. So, the first question, Gus, and this is something that I always like to ask people because everybody's story is so interesting. How did you get into real estate? It's not like something most of the time. Well, as a loan officer, at least, nobody grows up and says, I want to be a loan officer. Maybe there's a few people that say, I want to grow up and be a realtor. But how did you get into the business? And then we'll go into your background because that's also super interesting for you too.
Well, I certainly didn't grow up wanting to be a realtor,
Okay.
but I was around it my entire life. My grandfather actually was a real estate agent for 40-something years up until his death. Worked till the day he died, was very successful, especially in the 80s. And that's always been in the back of my mind. But growing up, I wanted to be a martial artist.
Okay. Yeah. And that actually leads us to my next thing that I really enjoy talking to you about off camera, which is your background in martial arts. We kind of connected over the fact that we both are jiu-jitsu practitioners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about your journey with martial arts professionally and then also as a hobby.
Yeah, well, again, I grew up in the martial arts. My father has a couple of schools to this day. Grew up on the Karate Kid, Ninja Turtles. That was my era. So everybody, wore their little karate uniform to schools and all that stuff. So for me, it's always been around. One of the biggest things that I saw growing up was the evolution of what martial arts had become. So it went from all the traditional styles of martial arts all the way into what we see now, which is the modern martial arts or, mixed martial arts, MMA, jiu-jitsu, and stuff like that, where it's very realistically based. Everything has to do with sparring. Everything has to do with what happens if.
Right.
Whereas everything else used to be theoretical, used to be kata, weapons, stuff that, you read in the books and stuff like that. But
right.
I mean, in reality, is this actually going to happen?
Right. Real world application.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always say that jiu-jitsu has real world application.
Absolutely.
I mean, every art does to some extent, but more with jiu-jitsu than others, I feel. I don't know if you agree with that.
Jiu-jitsu is one of those things that, the Gracies, they adapted it from Kodokan Judo, and eventually made it their own thing where it was very unique to what they were doing. And the realistic aspect is that anybody can do it. Anybody can go into it. Anyone can, really adapt themselves and, defend themselves. That's really what it's all about.
Right.
It's all about that defense. Once you get into the competition reigns and stuff like that, and you're doing the sport jiu-jitsu, then it's all about who's the better athlete with the best technique.
Right.
And that's kind of what the jiu-jitsu has turned into a little bit today. So you see guys like Gordon Ryan, Nicky Rod, and these guys are, kind of the best at what they do. And they're freakishly huge athletes.
Right.
So, but the wonderful thing that I love about jiu-jitsu is most jiu-jitsu practitioners are not going to look like that. They're going to look like you and me, So some of them just want to have more energy to play with their kids. Others, just want a means to defend themselves.
Right.
So, my journey was a little different. I was already doing martial arts, and I had seen UFC and all that stuff, from the very beginning. But it was one of those things where I saw it and I was like, it's not for me.
Right.
Too much hugging. However, as I got older and I was getting more into the full contact stuff, the kickboxing, Muay Thai, I really gravitated towards watching the older VHS tapes of the UFC and looking at the modern DVDs of what was going on. And I was totally into it. So I found a jiu-jitsu school with the aspirations of being a mixed martial arts fighter. And I originally found Matt Serra and trained with him for like the first year, and then ended up, moving. Actually, I was working in Long Island, and I ended up working back in the city. So that's when I eventually found Renzo Gracie. And at the time, he's very, very expensive. And I was a young kid that was surviving on teaching martial arts. Right. So I joined his school, and the rest is history. Black belt under him, been there for pretty much 20 years.
So here's Gus in line at the coffee store, and you bump into him, and you got no idea that he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Good luck. But yeah, I mean, everything you said about, I know for me, I enjoyed, I'm competitive.
Yes.
So I feel like if you're competitive, you're going to enjoy solo sports, and specifically like combat stuff, because like you just want to win, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
That's really what, I mean, if we boil down every sport, that's really what it's about, but even more so in combat sports. So it, like, my interest in it was very natural. I wrestled for like maybe a year in middle school, and I liked that, and I was good at it, and that made me like it. And then somebody introduced me to jiu-jitsu, and it became like my life as a kid, like, and when I say kid, I mean from like 13 years old to 16 years old. And then
you went to Soka, right?
I went to Sousa.
Sousa, oh.
In Baltimore.
Emerson Sousa, yes.
Emerson Sousa.
I know him as well.
Yeah, so.
Good guy.
I trained under him for 3 years as a kid, and I loved it. I started competing. It became my life. I subscribed to magazines. Like I'm very also obsessive as well. So like when I get into
I think
something,
you have to be with things like this. And what I find is, the guys that do the martial arts, specifically jiu-jitsu, they're very obsessive with other things in their life, mainly their career.
Right.
And those are the guys that you see rise to the top.
Right. I mean, it's to be successful at anything, right? And that's one of the reasons why I love it today. Before I even go into that, what I was saying was the best quote that I heard when I first got started to kind of explain what jiu-jitsu was to a normal person who didn't know what it was it was made for the smaller and weaker to beat the bigger and stronger. So everything you said about like everybody can do it and actually apply it in a real world situation, and it actually will help you, even if you're not that athletic or not that strong or not big, it actually works. Where other martial arts and other sports in general, like you can't be 5 foot and play basketball.
Yeah,
it's just not going to happen, right?
You could play basketball, but just not at a high level,
not successfully, right? So with this, you can be the weaker and smaller person and still beat the bigger and stronger opponent, and that's what I love so much about it, because it's truly chess on the ground.
Absolutely.
And then I started to, nowadays when I started training again, I start to see similarities between jiu-jitsu and business.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I want to talk, because obviously this is a real estate specific show, but we talk about everything. But like, what are some of the similarities between jiu-jitsu and what you do now, and how does it help you?
So, okay. So let's say you have somebody starting as a white belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, just walked on the mats, and you have somebody that just passed their real estate license and they're going into the brokerage. The similarities, especially when you first start, is you know nothing. Right? You are an empty glass, and you need to, pretty much fill your cup and start learning from the bottom. The other similarity is that it will humble you, right? In jiu-jitsu, you could be a big, huge, tough guy and think you are king of the streets. And then, a guy half your size just pummels you.
Right.
And chokes you in every which direction. I've seen professional athletes. I've seen, guys that honestly look like they can handle themselves get destroyed by guys that were like maybe
by girls.
Yeah. By girls. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the same way in real estate, because you get humbled every day. You pick up the phone, you call, and the person on the other line is going to humble you because you need thick skin in this business. You may not get the answers that you want. So with both of them, it's very humbling. What I can say, being I've been in real estate. I'm starting my 3rd year right now. And what I could say from jiu-jitsu, being through that whole cycle, 20 years doing that, almost 35 years in the martial arts, probably more at this point. But what I can tell you about both of them is that you need consistency and you need mental toughness in order to survive. The guy that starts on the mat in a jiu-jitsu class and, goes in every single day and gets beat up, sooner or later, so long as he's consistently going and so long as he is mentally looking and being a good finder, finding what are the things he improved rather than the things that he did completely wrong, that will make the difference. And it's the same thing in real estate.
100%. I think with this business in particular, it's a freaking emotional roller coaster. The last time we sat down, I explained I can start my day and I'm a 10, 2 hours later I'm a 3 because I just got beat down. I feel like I'm the best, and then halfway through the day it's like, holy crap, do I know what I'm doing? It's constantly. And you have to show up regardless.
Absolutely.
That's I think the huge similarity is no matter how you're feeling, no matter how your day was yesterday or how your day started, your job is to show up consistently and improve. And I think you doing martial arts for 30 plus years has allowed you to now translate that same consistency to real estate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that I've ever gained from jiu-jitsu, besides, confidence I already had, but jiu-jitsu, for somebody that's unconfident, you get that confidence.
Right.
But I would say the second biggest thing that you get from jiu-jitsu is you learn how to work your mind in a strategic aspect in everything that you do. That will carry over. So if you're, looking to pass the guard,
right,
and, looking to get into better positions and find easier ways and, go against the grain, so to speak, to get to the position that you need to, it's the same thing in real estate.
right.
There's a lot of people that really emphasize on doing the work and doing all this hard work, right? I believe you have to show up and you have to put in the work.
Right.
As far as hard work,
right,
there's two mindsets. You can work hard or you can work smart. I've always believed in working smart. That's not to say that I don't work hard.
Right, right.
But I feel like it's two different things. I feel like if, work is already inherently hard.
Right.
Right. If it were, nobody, if everybody could, they would just stay at home. They do whatever their passion was. Right. When your passion is what you do, that's when things become easier.
Right.
Now, when you're working in real estate, I really emphasize on working smart and being time efficient. And that could be like time blocking. That could be a whole bunch. We could go into that all day.
Right.
What I'm going to focus on specifically is doing things that, one, are not going to take up 110% of your time, and things that, are effective. That's working smart.
Right.
All right.
Not doing all the stuff that doesn't make you money, focusing on the stuff that makes you money. Yeah.
Exactly.
I see that. That's probably one of the big, top 5 mistakes that real estate professionals do is they do all of the stuff that they enjoy doing, right? That may lead to business down the line, but it's not one of those key, what we call your ATM, your actions that matter.
Yeah.
That's To me, the first thing that everybody should do in any business is figure out what are the actions that matter. What are the actions that are going to, move the needle and drive business? If that's cold calling, you need to figure out your plan and how much time you're going to allocate towards cold calling. If that's door knocking, you're going to need to figure out your plan and your strategy about door knocking. If that's, social media, figure out your plan and strategize about your social media, and then do those things consistently over and over and over again, no matter how you feel. So, but what a lot of people will do is they'll distract themselves with, creating their website. And although you definitely need to set that stuff up, but if you spend 3 years creating your website, you didn't do anything.
Get it done in a couple of days, or hire somebody to do it.
Correct. Or they want to focus on their logo, or they want to focus on whatever. And a conversation that I was actually having this morning is a lot of the times we know what we need to do, and we are subconsciously, purposely distracting ourselves. Common example of that,
putting it aside.
Yeah,
we'll do it later.
A common example of that is we were talking about in the conversation that I was talking about. We were talking about morning routines and how they're important, right?
Have to stick to it.
However, a lot of people will seek out what their morning routine should be to distract them from the actual work that they're supposed to be taking. So I'll give you a common example. You get into business, you want to be successful, you need to do these 3 things, but you're like, but first let me dial in my morning routine. And you go to YouTube and you type in millionaire morning routine. And you think because you're going to drink green juice in the morning, wake up at 5, read a book and work out, that you're going to be more successful. Meanwhile, you're not doing the 3 things that are going to make you successful. You're not doing the actions that matter. Now, that is not to say you shouldn't have a morning routine, because morning routines are important to your mental and emotional health, and it's going to make you more effective, but don't let that distract you from the actual work that you need to do.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think a lot of people are they're doing productive things, but they're really distractions.
Yeah.
They're like things that I need to do, but I'm going to do those instead of the actions that actually matter.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that how these two things really relate is that you have to find your path and you have to find your way, right? Eric Braun's way may not exactly be Gustavo Larrea's way, and everybody has to figure that out for themselves. And in jiu-jitsu specifically, you will create what we call a game, all right? This is your strategy to get to your finishing position. Finishing position meaning submission, right? Essentially, it's the same thing in your real estate. Your finishing position in real estate is getting paid.
Right.
Is getting the close, is showing value to your customer, showing that you care about them, and getting them across the finish line. And as we all know, things happen in these deals.
Right.
So you have to have the strategy not only to get them to the finish line, but when things happen as well.
Right.
And it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu and real estate. And again, very parallel lines.
Yeah.
And you could take these things and essentially put them, apply them to anything you do in life.
Anything.
Which is what's fantastic about it.
That's what I love about it today. It's like, yeah, exactly that. And now let's talk about your real estate career so far. So you've been in the business 3 years. You didn't expect to get, you didn't grow up wanting to be in real estate, but you saw the example of your grandfather. You knew that he was successful, so that was always in the back of your mind. What is your 3 years? Give me like a quick rundown of what you've done in your 3 years and your experience so far.
Okay, so I was not your typical guy that came in that had the game plan for this. This was something that just kind of happened.
Right.
It was always in the back of my mind, but it's not something that I was planning on doing. What happened was I was working for a sales as a service company, specifically, getting leads for financial advisors. I had some experience in the past working in that industry, so it was a real good fit. I knew a lot of people, had a big sphere, and I've been in sales for 20 years easily. So what had happened was the pandemic hit, and like a lot of people, we all got laid off. So I had a decent amount of money saved, and I was like, you know what? I think this is the first time that I think I could actually go and do this.
Right.
I had money set aside for just such a emergency, and I took my test and I went into it. You have to find. I think the most important thing is you have to find the right fit. I have always been an entrepreneur, and I always had a hard time working for other people.
Right.
That's why I always liked real estate, because it is essentially your own business. But what I found, at least, initially, was not too many people are willing to help you right off the bat.
Right.
You kind of get thrown to the sharks. And that was fine with me.
Just like a white belt.
Yeah.
Kind of. I feel like the jiu-jitsu community will, depending on who you roll with and what gym you go to, they may help you.
Now.
Yeah. Back then it wasn't like that.
Well, it was, but it was a lot more gruesome.
Right.
The guys were a little bit tougher. But this is nothing I wasn't prepared for. So I worked at one place for about a year, and it was not a good fit. And I had been reading about, joining other teams. So I found a team on Long Island that I thought was a good fit, and actually was pretty good. I learned a lot being on this team. And towards the end of the year, I said, you know what? It is time for me to grow. It is time for me to do this on my own. And one of the biggest things is, with most people who are first starting out, what is the biggest thing? Lead generation.
Right.
All right. So they go onto a team, they go on to, get those Zillow leads and stuff like that. But what I stress to people is, joining a team is one of the best things you can do, but do not put yourself in a position where you're using what they're giving you as a crutch. You must be able to learn how to grow. And if you grow on the team, that's great. If your end game is to be a solo agent, that's fine too. But the number one thing is, you have to use the time on the team to grow your skills. If you are not growing your skills, if you go out on your own, you're dead in the water.
Right.
So that's one of those things that I always tell everybody.
Right.
Right. A lot of people, they come into real estate, I'm going to be solo, I'm going to do it on my own, and they're great. There's a guy from Signature. I forgot his name. His name's Sean. Forgot his name. But this gentleman, he's a cop, and he goes into
Manning.
Yeah. He goes into the business and does.
Shout out to Sean Manning. He's gonna love that you mentioned him.
I ran into him last Saturday.
Really?
At the fights.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. He was at the fight. Oh, he's gonna love this.
I think that's amazing.
What?
I think that's amazing what he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
talk about him some
good.
more, because I want to put this on my story so that he feels so special that somebody's talking about him. Go ahead.
No, I just recently learned about him, as I think most people have. And he goes from being a cop, or he still is a cop, which is even more impressive.
Right.
All right. Shout out to all my first responders there.
Right.
And he goes into the business, and like in 3 quarters does like 40 deals or something. That's amazing to me. Right. That's better. It's better than anything I'm doing right now.
Right.
In that sense, I'm trying to do something a little bit different. What I'm building right now is something that not only I can use for myself, but at the same time, help others do.
Right.
And for me to do that, I'm testing out a lot of things, and I'm putting myself at great risk to do so.
Right.
But risk doesn't bother me.
Right.
If you're going to be a champion, you have to sacrifice. If you are going to do great things, you have to be able to, really push yourself to get to that point. And, anybody that can do that and succeed, my hat's off to them, because I know what that's like.
Right. I saw a quote the other day. It said, like, what you look at as opportunity now, you once looked at as risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you have to kind of flip your mindset. And what we do is risky, right?
Yeah.
We eat what we kill, and if we don't help people buy houses or sell houses, we don't get paid, and our family doesn't eat. So there has to be, you have to welcome some risk in this business. This isn't the stable 9 to 5. So talk a little bit about that, going from a stable 9 to 5 to, I know you were also in sales, but making the transition to real estate. How was that
I
like?
actually owned a couple of gyms. I ran all my father's gyms. So, going from a 9 to 5 to, my own business, I've done it before. So for me, it's not that big of a transition.
Mm-hmm.
But what I said before is that you have to have your schedule set. Cause it's very easy to, be at home and say, I'm going to watch TV for 20 minutes, or I'm going to go lay down and, I'm going to eat some ice cream or whatever it is, and especially when I started, I have a pool in my backyard. It was nice
COVID,
out.
You weren't allowed to go
anywhere.
anywhere.
We weren't allowed to go anywhere. I'm like, I'm going to take a dip in the pool. I would say the number one thing is you need to build your reputation. You need to build your brand. And, people think brand is logo and colors and all this. No, man, it is your reputation. So put out your content. Mm-hmm. Put out stuff that gives value.
Right.
And people will see that. And then, if you do a cold call or, somebody comes in off of marketing off your website, if you're putting out enough value and you're pressing the flesh and networking with people in your specific area, well, they're going to know you.
Right.
Right. I would say one of the biggest things starting out was I'd cold call people, and the biggest objection I ever got was, I don't know you. Mm-hmm. So now, if you have that content out there, now people, you'd be like, hey, I saw you on YouTube, or I saw you on Instagram. Right. Hey, you're that real. They might not know your name, but they'll know your face.
Before, right.
I
think the best definition of brand that I've ever heard was what Jeff Bezos said: your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Absolutely.
And I think so. Brand is just a new word for reputation, which Gary Vee always talks about. It's not the logos, it's not the color scheme, it's not your website. That's your branding, right? Those are elements to communicate your brand. But your brand is when somebody hears your name, what do they feel? What do they think about? What was their experience? And that's how you create a true brand. Many years ago, when I first embarked on this whole social media content journey, like I wanted to make sure my foundation was laid. So the first thing that I did was a little exercise that I should probably put a guide together of what to do with this, but I have a presentation about it that I've used several times. But essentially, you need to ask yourself life's most meaningful questions, like why am I here? What do I love? And how does this business tie into it? And what really am I passionate about? And once you kind of ask yourself those questions, then you can start developing your brand, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, just to kind of close the loop on that, for me, I was at a point in my life when I first started Not Your Average Lender, where I wanted...
Great brand, by the way.
Thank you. I didn't want to be mediocre. I didn't want to have average relationships, average money, an average life. I didn't want to be married to somebody that I hated, and just what average people do, right?
Yeah,
Let's face
yeah.
it. I didn't want that. And that started me on this whole, like, defeating average sort of quest. And that actually existed before I actually got into the mortgage business, number one, and before I even came up with Not Your Average Lender. But you can see how Not Your Average Lender, there's something behind it. Mm-hmm. That's the brand, right? There's, and then I created a mission statement that really, put that, I'm trying to communicate my message, which is to defeat average in real estate by adding value. That's what I do. And once you ask yourself those questions, figure out what your name is going to be, which is not as important as what's behind it. Once you put your mission statement together, that's when it's easy to produce content, because now I know what I'm communicating. Every single video that I put together is to remove average from real estate by adding value. Mm-hmm. That's what I do with every single post.
What's that called? Working smart.
That's working smart. Exactly. Yes. To go full circle and talk about what you were talking about. But I feel like too many people create a logo. There's nothing behind it. They may even have a cool name, which is a plus, right? Whether it's, whatever, Train sells houses. What they may even have a good
Train sells
username.
Long Island.
Yes, Train sells LI.
He's going into business right away now.
Shout out to Sean again. But they may even have a cool name, but if there's nothing behind it, when somebody hears Train sells houses, there's no feeling. You don't have a brand yet. And that takes time to develop. Somebody also told me when I was interviewing them, like, your brand is like the soul of your marketing.
Absolutely.
So when you think of it like that, then it starts to make a lot of sense. But my recommendation for anybody starting is, like, start that exercise and journey immediately, so that everything that comes after that is built on something that's strong. Which I see that you're doing, and you're putting the systems in place, and you're starting to produce content, which let's talk about that. I know that's relatively new for you, right?
Yeah. Going on my own really drove me to really start putting out all the things that I have been kind of putting off, as you say, mm-hmm. right? I was like, oh, I have too many showings, or, oh, I have too... Well, now things are a little bit slower. It's not like, how it was during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Things have slowed down. It is still busy, but it's not as busy as it was. So I have time now. Mm-hmm. And especially when I don't have to go to other meetings or anything like mm-hmm. that, I can just concentrate on these things. So it was funny because, I kept thinking of, I see all these people doing all these traditional things, and they work, but they're killing themselves.
Right.
And I always say to myself, I was like, there has to be a better way. And when I was putting all my systems together, I got reminded of this time when I was a kid. We're going to do a flashback right now, right? Mm-hmm. So probably like in the early 90s, right? There was a giant snowstorm. I lived in Howard Beach at the time, and a bunch of, it snowed like a lot. It was probably like 4 feet, 5 feet, something like that. Wow. And the plows had created these big giant mountains, buried all the cars. So the kids in the neighborhood, they would be very imaginative. They would use their imagination. They're sliding on these things. They built igloos. Our crew of kids, we played King of the Hill. Mm-hmm. And for anybody that doesn't know that game, it's a bunch of people running up a hill trying to knock the top guy off. Right? And whoever's the best stays on the top. They're King of the Hill. Mm-hmm. Right. So one day we're playing, and a couple older kids, they're kind of like bullyish types. They ran through us, and, one of the older kids is King of the Hill. Right. Mm-hmm. So everybody's running on top, and these kids are like hurting us, and one of my friends in particular, he knocked him down. The kid smacked his head, and this kid was just, you saw it in his eyes. He was very upset.
Yeah.
Right. So while everybody's running up the hill, he grabs like a broken broomstick, runs up the back of the hill, and cracks this kid across the legs. Kid falls down. Big thing ensues. it was
It's a brawl.
but it was taken care of. But nobody ever bothered that kid again. And the one thing that I took away from that is that you don't got to be the best. You just got to have a bigger stick.
What is that reminds me of what does Teddy Roosevelt say? Speak softly but carry a big stick.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the real estate game is interesting, right? I mean, you get started, you know nothing. You stay consistent. You start to learn stuff. You start to feel good. Then you get knocked down by a shit experience, a deal falls apart, whatever happens, drama, emotions, client tells you, oh, they're going to use their aunt to list their house, and you put in all this work and this time, whatever it is. And then you start to build up again. And it's just this never ending, like, you have to be mentally strong.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And your big stick has to be your systems.
Right.
Has to be your marketing.
Right.
Has to be your reputation. Has to be how you are able to relate to your clients.
Right.
That's your big stick.
Gotcha.
And you have to have a bigger stick than everybody else.
Gotcha.
And be able to use it as well.
So, and now what's the goal for you for the rest of the year?
The goal for me is to, right now I'm working on all my digital marketing systems. So that's pretty much going to launch at the end of the week. And my strategy is to provide the most amount of value for every single one of my clients. That is one thing that I lacked on doing in the last year. When you're very, very busy and you got too much going on and you're spread too thin, sometimes things fall by the wayside. So this year I am really concentrating on how to help people even more, no matter what the situation, no matter how busy I am.
Right.
And again, the marketing is going to be, something a little different that, people have done before, but maybe not the way that I'm doing it.
Right.
It is more specific towards the gyms and the dojos. So I'm bringing that kind of mindset to my real estate business. And, moving forward, again, I'm not really looking to build a team or anything. But if I could help others that are just starting, and, give them the proper skeletal structure of how they can do this business and be successful. And that word successful is whatever they want it to be.
They deem it to be, right?
Yeah. So if I can help people do that, that would be great. So that's between that and, obviously getting as many deals as possible.
That too. Right?
Let's do that too. All right. But I have a lot of different ideas. There's a lot rattling around up there.
I hear you. I hear you.
But at the same time, I'm out there pressing the flesh. I'm doing more of these podcasts, talking to more people, going to more events, and really getting my name out there. So, I mean, if anybody is in Long Beach, Rockville Center, Oceanside, Island Park, Garden City, those are my areas. That's where I'm working, and I'm ready to help anybody that needs help either buying or selling a home.
And I know you will. I know you will do all those things because you have the right mindset. So I want to thank you for coming on the Realtor Spotlight.
Absolutely, man.
We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, definitely. We should do one, a little while from now.
We'll bring you back for a
Part
second
two.
time. Yeah. Thank you, brother. Cool.